All right, and Hunter cards. So lock and load. I have seen a significant number of people saying that they think this card is very powerful, but this is a card that this feels like the sort of card that gets added to Hunter because it's the sort of card that has nothing to do with what the Hunter class actually wants to do. That, in general, classes typically want to build decks that are able to appropriately leverage their hero power. And the Hunter hero power is deal 2 damage to your face. So what you generally want to do when your hero power is deal 2 damage to your face is other things that deal damage to your opponent's face. And this is a card that can enable some pretty cool late game scenarios where you get to, kind of go off and get a big amount of card advantage if you happen to have a significant number of cheap spells in hand. But that's just not the way that competitive Hunter decks typically play out. Competitive Hunter decks typically play out such that they are looking to use their mana efficiently, play things on curve, and finish the opponent off relatively quickly. Maybe you're able to create some sort of control style of Hunter deck where you can use lock and load into Hunter's marks and arcane shots and traps and whatever else, and sort of reload your hand. But that we haven't really seen those kinds of decks typically be very successful because they are pretty much at odds with what the rest of the Hunter class wants to do. So I do think this is a card that may open up some cool and creative deck designs, but I would be surprised to see this card be one that is particularly powerful and particularly effective in competitive play. Ball of Spiders. This card is hilarious. And that's it. This is another card that it basically feels like you're just kind of doing a weird, neat thing. Lock and load is a weird, neat thing that maybe someone will build a deck around. This just feels like a card that's made because it's a funny name and it's a funny effect, and there are people who appreciate that. This can definitely be a card that maybe someone puts into their deck and it's hilarious every time they cast it because it creates some random stuff. But this is not a card that people will play competitively. Like it is. I mean, maybe that happens, and I look relatively foolish, but no, I just don't believe it. Like maybe your opponent's arachnophobic, and this causes them to concede because there's just so many spiders in play. But paying 6 mana for 3 1/1s is not very exciting in the first place, and yeah, I just do. This is just a card that is basically a funny card that exists for that reason, and that's fine. Like from a game design perspective. And this is something that I think is important for people to understand, like who come from sort of the purely competitive mindset. That cards that literally exist because they are likely to be funny to someone, that's fine. Like cards have a variety of reasons they can exist. Cards can exist because they are particularly suited to creating kinds of interactions that are important for competitive play. Cards can exist because they are cool, evocative things of a particular thing in the world or game storyline. Cards can exist just because they're funny, and this is one that basically exists because it's funny. And I mean, similarly, like Leroy Jenkins as a card, it's like that card tells a story, and that story is more important than the fact that the card is just a powerful card that's a finisher for aggressive decks. And Ball of Spiders, it tells a story, and that story's funny. And whether this card shows up in competitive decks, it doesn't mean that the designer development team did something wrong. This card is for someone, maybe it's not you, and that's okay. All right, Brave Hunter. Inspire, if your hand is empty, deal 2 damage to the enemy hero. So this card it kind of is just like a worse Leper Gnome, it seems. Except for the fact that, like, yes, if you get, like, really late in the game and you play this, like, you hero power and you get 2 extra damage. If you do this twice, it's better than Leper Gnome, or if you can play this and hero power when your Leper Gnome might not otherwise be able to die, then it can be better. I can imagine that there's a world in which people are playing these hyper aggressive Hunter decks where you actually want just even more 1-drops. Because I mean, even if a card is worse than Leper Gnome, there's room for that to exist. Like a card that is not as good as the best aggressive 1-drop in the game can still be good. And this one is potentially a repeatable use, because if you do play this use your hero power, and it survives the turn, you get the hero power again, and you actually get 4 damage off of the card, which is extremely powerful for a 1-cost card. So I do think this is actually potentially a good card. It does have a cost that comes with it in terms of including it instead of other 1-drops in your Face Hunter deck. You can potentially just want to play even more 1-drops in your Face Hunter deck, especially because the empty hand clause means that you're more likely to want to have less situational cards, and you're likely to want to have more cards you can play cheaply and proactively. So maybe this is a card that kind of helps build to that empty hand theme that we've seen out of Quickshot and Core Rager. I'd be surprised to see Core Rager really in those decks, just because it's a 4-drop minion that is going to be unlikely for you to actually be able to empty your hand to enable your other stuff. But it is also a big game hunter target in a deck that otherwise wouldn't have any. So both of those kind of go against wanting to actually have that card in your deck. But I mean, this is a very powerful effect, and I mean, Hunter is a class that wants to use its hero power a lot because its hero power is totally busted. So I can definitely see this being a card that makes its way into aggressive Hunter decks, even if it may be worse than Leper-Gnome in general. That doesn't mean that it's not good enough to get a slot. I think this is a powerful card that will see play.